This is the 27th of Last Seed, the year of Akatosh 433. These are the closing days of the Third Era, and the final hours of my life.
The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion is the latest in a long-running line of role-playing games from developer Bethesda, and all these games have tried to put you in this big open-ended world where you're free to go about playing however you choose. So whether you want to be good or evil, or a fighter or a mage, you could do all this stuff and pretty much in any combination. The difference is primarily that The Elder Scrolls IV is a much, much better game than any of its predecessors, and there have been some really good games in this series in the past. This is just an amazing experience overall, but more importantly, it's actually just fun to play. Whether you're in a lot of combat and slugging it out with your opponents, or creating your own potions, or burglarizing people's homes and taking their stuff and selling it to the Thieves Guild. This game just delivers a lot of thrills and looks fantastic and sounds fantastic pretty much the whole way through.
Yeah. Yeah. Ha.
You really don't need to know anything about the previous Elder Scrolls games to be able to dive right into this one. Oblivion really fixes problems like that, and it introduces its own unique storyline that really pulls you right in from the start and keeps you going, but at the same time gives you reason to branch off and explore the rest of the world. Like the other Elder Scrolls games, Oblivion takes place in the fantasy world of Tamriel, specifically in the Imperial province of Cyrodiil. It's basically this big chunk of landmass where there are a whole bunch of different cities, including a main Imperial city, and all this stuff off the beaten path, various dungeons and so on and so forth. This is, in many ways, your traditional fantasy world with character races like elves and orcs and things like that, and yet it definitely has its own culture and history, and you get that feeling very early on. It's really pronounced through the entire game, where you're finding bookcases on the walls where you can stop and read different books about the history of the world, but you know, if that's too dry for you, you could just move on. The story of the game involves you somehow becoming wrapped up in this plot to assassinate the Emperor and basically undermine the entire imperial political regime. So you end up searching for the illegitimate son of the Emperor and kind of helping him out as he works to stop this invasion that's basically from hell. You've got these things called Oblivion gates opening up all over the world, and all kinds of really horrible monsters and demons pouring out of them, and you're just trying to figure out a way to stop these things. But in addition to this main quest, there's a whole bunch of other stuff you could do, like join different factions and basically solve a whole bunch of people's different problems, and even just go off questing on your own, whether you're hunting animals or stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, or pretty much any number of things. You could be making your own spells, making your own potions, owning your own businesses, all kinds of stuff. This game just has a remarkable amount of stuff that you could do in it, and all these different things, they're pretty entertaining in their own right, but when you add them all up together, it's just an incredible thing.
And over in the Priory House, the Emperor and his 3 sons dead.
You can play the game either from a first-person or third-person perspective. The first-person perspective is probably better, since it just really gives you a better feel for the entire surroundings, and just the animations look better when you see them up close. Basically, the gameplay boils down to combat, stealth, and magic, or at least those are the main specializations you can choose for your character. And the combat, really, it looks like an action game, and a good one at that. It's a lot of toe-to-toe battling. It's pretty simple, where you just press the attack button lightly for quick attacks, or you press and hold it for power attacks. And as you gain more skill in different weapons, you gain power attacks that can disarm your opponent or paralyze them or knock them down. It's not complicated, but it's definitely fun and intense, and just seeing the way some of the physics play out, you know, smashing an enemy with a warhammer and watching them fall down the stairs, that stuff can be really satisfying in any given moment and just over a long period of time as well. There's also some solid ranged combat in this game. You could snipe at foes with a bow and arrow, or using destructive magic. And the stealth is handled quite well also, where there's a clear context-sensitive icon that tells you whether you're being seen by characters in the vicinity or not. You can sneak up, pickpocket them, sneak attack them for major damage, break into locked treasure chests and really play as a burglar, as well as, say, this big honkin' warrior with a warhammer, or as some kind of magic user just crafting different spells and beguiling enemies, or really any combination of these things. That's the thing about Oblivion. You don't end up playing a pure character unless you really go out of your way to just be a fighter who never uses magic whatsoever. You can use any of the skills in the game as the character you choose to play. The only difference is which skills you choose to specialize in. One of the really cool things about Oblivion is that it's not based on a generic experience point system like most role-playing games. So if your main skills are stealth and illusion magic and so forth, you're actually not gaining experience by killing stuff. You're gaining experience by sneaking by things and tricking things. This is the sort of game that you could find yourself playing for long periods of time. Should you get stuck, there's always something else that you could go and do. And it helps matters a lot that the whole thing looks and sounds as great as it does. Full speech for all the different characters you meet, which is really something that's pretty amazing. I mean, this game has literally hundreds of different characters in it. They're all introducing themselves to you and have their own unique face, and they lip sync their speech and have a little glint in their eye. They're really quite believable, and that's made possible by the high quality full speech throughout the whole game. And then there are the visuals themselves, which a lot of the time this game just looks totally amazing. Once in a while, especially if you're playing the PC version, you'll see the frame rate maybe hitch up a little bit, but for the most part, just the quality of the detail and the surroundings is just staggering. Whether you're in some underground catacomb with, crazy skeletons and tortured victims hanging off the walls, or in some hellish otherworldly plane, which you'll get to see quite a bit of during this game, or just in a town in someone's home, you'll be impressed by just the amount of stuff that goes into every scene. It's this game where you could cover miles and miles of distance just walking around, and you could also just stop and look around in someone's home and, steal a carrot off of their dining table or take their silverware. I mean, it's really got that fine a level of detail in it. Oblivion is available for the Xbox 360 and the PC, and you're basically getting the same game in both versions, but there's some subtle, important differences between the two. Basically, unless you have a high-end PC that can run this game to its fullest potential, you're not going to get a graphical presentation that's as good as the Xbox 360 version. If you have a nice home theater, big widescreen HD TV, 5.1 surround sound and all that, the Xbox 360 version is your safest choice. On the other hand, if you have a very, very souped-up PC with a recent high-powered graphics card, it's possible to get the PC version looking even better than the 360 version. There's some other little differences between the two, like on the PC, you can download the toolkit to create your own content, and more importantly, you can download other people's content, although the Xbox version also has hooks for downloadable content in the future. The Xbox version also has unlockable achievements to entice you to get in good with a lot of the factions and explore a lot of the content in a way that the PC version doesn't do as much. But the important thing is you're getting a fantastic role-playing experience either way. Whether you've been playing computer role-playing games for years and years and years, or whether you've been playing console role-playing games for years and years, or both, chances are Oblivion is going to impress you in a way that very few games you've played in the past have. This is the sort of game where you could just go on and on and on about every little detail, because there's so many cool little things that happen all throughout, and they're all things that are going to happen differently to everyone who plays this game, because it's really going to be your own experience, and unique things are going to happen with the way the artificial intelligence interacts with itself and the things that you choose to do in all the different quests. This is a game that defies a lot of the conventions of role-playing, and at the same time, it's one of the truest role-playing games that there's ever been in years. It really encompasses a lot of the best things about this style of gaming. So even if you normally don't like the idea of a role-playing game because it's going to have, some boring story that you don't care about, or just really tedious combat, something like that, Oblivion may still be the game for you, because this game just draws together so many things that are great, not just about role-playing games, but gaming in general, and ties them up into a really cohesive package that can keep you busy for weeks and weeks easily, just entertained and absorbed and really impressed. There's just so much content, so much almost overwhelming variety that this game just blows away pretty much anything similar. Barely anything even comes close.